Well, hey there, you awesome bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs. My name is Little Wolf, and welcome to my den. Go ahead, come on in, but please wipe your paws. And go ahead and have a seat by the fire. I just had another cup of coffee brewed up and made, and there's some left over for you guys if you would like some, but there's also tea and hot chocolate. So go ahead and feel free to use the cauldron. The other night, I was watching Wolf Creek and Wolf Creek 2. And don't worry, I'm not really going to review these movies. It just kinda hit another weird chord in me where I felt like I want to talk about what I think is probably the scarier type horror movies, where you have human on human horrors and atrocities pulled off. Because, I love my zombie movies, I do like my Jason movies, and I love my Freddy movies, and things like that. But part of the fun with it is something like that cannot really happen. But then you come across something like Wolf Creek, where sure, the movie itself is kind of an exaggeration on real life events, and it does pretend to say it's based on true events, and that part is true because there was a serial killer in Australia known as the Backpack Killer who would go after tourists there backpacking the country, and he would kidnap them, and many were not to be heard from again, if I remember it right. But there are so many movies out there that do that moniker, where it's based on true events. But then when you look into it, the true part is, yes, people died and it was another person that did it. But then you dig deeper into the story and it's a lot more different than that. And one of the most well-known ones now would probably be Psycho, with Norman Bates, and dressing up as his mother and killing beautiful women who decide to stop and stay at their motel. And that was based, I believe, off of Ed Gein, if I'm right. I might have to look it up again. I'm sorry. But like I said, this kind of just popped into my head, and I figured I'll sit down and record about it, and if you want to listen, awesome. And if it's not your cup of tea or cup of coffee, I'm sorry. But there are so many movies out there where it is a human on human thing, and a lot of them I try to stay away from because I'm already a little leery of people, and then this just kind of intensifies that. But then you find a really good one, like the movie Hush, where it's a lady who is mute deaf, and she is pretty much chased around her house by an unknown killer. You get to see his face and things like that, but you never actually learn who he is. And the way it happens in that movie is just really awesome. Not the fact that she got hunted around her own house and different things happen throughout the movie that are pretty freaky, but it's the way they put it together, and I highly suggest that you look it up. Another one that jumps to mind now is You're Next, where it's a whole group of people that descend upon a house while they're having, I think it's a party. It's been a few years since I watched it, but they're dressed up in animal masks and things like that, and a whole bunch of fun stuff kind of happens, and it's filled with a lot of dark humor in it. And anybody who really knows me, especially with the Swordsman and my gaming group, and a few of you out there that I chat with, you know I have a weird and twisted sense of humor. And so something like Your Next kinda sticks out to me, and it does make me laugh. And it kinda says a little something about me when I can sit there and look at something like this and laugh. And that brings to mind one of my favorite stories that happened, and this is a little tangent, and I'm sorry. But I was watching a preview for one of the Dead Space movies, and it was the second movie. And there's a scene in there where something flies by a little girl, and it hits her in the head, and her head suddenly pops off like a daisy. And for me, I just started laughing my butt off. And my brother at the time looked at me and was like, "What is wrong with you?" But it was the absurdity of what had happened. I mean, it would take a lot for someone to sit there and twist your head off until it pops off, and much less something flying by and making your head spin so fast that it pops off. And it also helps that it's a CGI movie. So, I mean, a lot of that should just be taken with a grain of salt, and I'm sorry for that little tangent again, but that brought that to mind. But when it comes to the human-on-human movies, like I said, it is one of the scarier things out there because it's something that can and will and does happen. I was talking with one of my friends online the other day, and we started talking about Picton up there in Canada, and he was one who took his victims and butchered them and then fed them to his pigs. And these are things that you see a lot when they talk about the serial killers and just killers in general who do weird atrocities. And another one that comes to mind, and I'm not sure if they made a movie of him, and I kind of forget his name right now, and you know, I should be a flurper and do my own research, but right now, I'm on my phone talking to you good people. But he was the man who made his own hotel, and he made booby traps and sliding doors and hidden hallways and hidden rooms and things like that. And he would go after women who were by themselves, I believe. And he was a very well-known person in the community. And that's usually another thing that happens with them, is that they're kind of a person who most people know, and then they also would not expect them to be doing these kinds of things. It's one of those areas where they say, "Oh, well, that guy over there, he can't be all that bad. He's so quiet and nice, and he helps me out every week, and he brings in my groceries. He even helped my grandma do this, that, and the next thing." But then it's always the stuff behind closed doors that is kind of scary with them. And that brings to mind another one, which is kind of a lesser-known movie, but it's 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams. And one of the few times where he plays outside of his wheelhouse of comedy and family movies and things like that. But it does kind of fit, because when you have comedy and horror and they're kind of the complete opposites, usually if you're good at one, you can be good at the other. But that's a movie where I can remember watching it, and I remember someone saying this, that they were like, this movie really isn't that scary, and it's not that twisted, and it's not that bad. And then you see him sitting in his house, or his apartment, I forget which, and the camera pans back, and he has a whole wall that is nothing but pictures from other families, or it might be just this one family that he's kind of latched onto. But that's just another one of those weird things that happens with them, because they have something kind of off in their head. And I know a lot of us, especially in our community, are kind of weird and twisted and things like that. I mean, I've talked to a lot of you, and I think a lot of you do follow me, and I love all of you for it. But, I mean, we like to, I wouldn't really say think outside the box, because we look at the people who try and do that, and we sit there and say, well, yeah, you might think this, but you're wrong. And I'm probably wrong about a lot of the things I say and do. And to some of the people that I've had that happen to, I've gone back and apologized. And I'm glad you guys have followed me this far. I mean, shoot, I now have 105 subscribers. That still really just blows my mind. I mean, I thought I would jump online, make a few videos, and that would probably be the end of it. But then I have people like Kat and now King Crew who come along and say, oh my god, I love listening to your episodes and it helps me relax. And that's what I want to do. And I'm sorry about this little tangent here too. All of this is now kind of off the script, which I started doing somewhat scripted episodes before. But back to the movies. I mean, with human on human ones, of course you have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is another twist on the Ed Gein story. And it's a human on human one where you have the hillbilly family who capture some kids. One of them kills people with a chainsaw, and then he takes their skin and makes human suits out of them. And it's just weird little things like that where everything's going fine and dandy, and next thing you know, you're turned into a maze of horror and atrocities, and you're trying to run for your life. And that's kind of why it really is the scariest thing for me. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's been said that maybe you walk by a serial killer at least 3-4 times in your life, and nothing happens to you. Which, I'm kind of glad that nothing does happen, because I don't want anything to happen to my listeners. I love having you guys in my den. And without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this stuff. And I'm still rambling. And I just wanted to sit down and talk a little bit about these movies. And it kind of brings to mind another weird subgenre of human on human violence, because I did recently download another movie that's been a while since I've seen it, but it's The Mountain of the Cannibal God. And it's the cannibal movies where it's another weird human on human thing, and some of it, it's it's a little hard to think that it could happen, but there still are some unknown tribes out there that do practice cannibalism. You have the one that lives on the island where they've made it illegal to go within 3 miles of its shores. And we know there are people that are on there because we've seen helicopters fly by, and we've seen, I think a boat had began to sink, and one of the survivors swam to its shores, but instead of helping him, the natives there just killed him. And so yes, there are little pockets in the world where these people still exist. And so we have had a plethora of movies out there based on these kind of events. I was talking the other night with someone about Cannibal Holocaust, and they say it really disturbed them, and it should disturb you. I mean, people eating people is a very disturbing thing. And also, I know some of the animal violence is probably very disturbing to people. But then you have to realize with that is the animal violence is something that happens no matter what, because a lot of us are omnivores. We eat meat and we eat plants. But if you eat meat, these are the kind of things that will happen to them. And I won't really go too much into the details of them, but being an Alaska native, and I've lived out in the villages for a bit with my family out there, and they do hunting and trapping and things like that. And so I've seen animals be made ready for consumption and things like that. So I think to some of us, we're kind of desensitized to animal violence because we know what goes on behind the scenes to make your food. And I'm sorry if this disturbs you, but it's a part of life up here. We hunt moose, we hunt deer, or reindeer, because reindeer sausage is yummy. And we hunt odd foods that some people probably haven't tried, like beaver. And we have so many different fish that we get up here. We have the blackfish, and I think what is called saltfish, and things like that, and we dry our fish. So, I mean, the animal violence can be really disturbing to people who just aren't used to that kind of thing, and I can understand why. Because we live in a world now where a good portion of us, if we're hungry, we can go to the store and just buy our own food from the meat section and then go home and cook it. And there are other places in the world where they have to go out and hunt the food and then make it ready themselves. So it can be really disturbing to see that kind of thing happen on camera. And yeah, I understand that part. And then with Cannibal Holocaust, if you look into the story behind it, it was such a believed movie that the director was brought into court and made to show that the actors and actresses were all fine and alive. And that just kind of goes to show you how realistic some of these movies can look and feel. And I think that's what gets to me most about them too, is how real they can feel. And I was talking with Dark Steve about the Holocaust movies, where it's the kind of quote-unquote torture porn movies. And I've seen part 1 and I've seen part 2. I haven't yet watched part 3, and I'm not sure if I will. But it's one of those movies where it takes it very well to the extreme of things. And so there might be little places where something like this might happen. I mean, there is the black market, and then like the weird stories about the deep web. And a lot of those I think are just kind of internet gossip and campfire stories, and some of it might not be. I'm not gonna rule it out because I really am not sure about it. I've seen some things found on the deep web by different YouTubers, and they are pretty sure that a lot of these things don't happen because of the equipment used to run on the deep web, because the bandwidth and things like that to run the deep web would not really be accessible. And so it's kind of a weird money scheme. So it's hard to tell. And then, let's see here. You have the movie Green Inferno by Eli Roth, who's another director that I really do like. Because, I mean, he had Cabin Fever, which is definitely one of my weird favorite movies. But he had Green Inferno, which I found not too long ago and I gave it a watch. And it's definitely an Eli Roth movie. And it's another one where people, of course, are traveling out in the jungle and talking to different natives that are there, and suddenly they're captured by a cannibalistic tribe. And you follow them on their journey through it because one of them still has a camera and it's being recorded. But then you have weird ideas like mine, where it's like, how long is that battery going to last in that camera? Sorry. But I do, like I said, horror is probably my favorite genre out there. And it always has been. And these human-on-human movies really do get to me and get under my skin because they are things that can happen. And I think I'll end it here for now because I think we've been going on for quite a while, or at least I have. When it comes to movies and things like that, I can tend to ramble a lot. And I think some of you out there might like it. Dark Steve, you are definitely very weird. But I love you, man. And King Crew, thank you for coming through now and suddenly saying you're going to be one of my biggest cheerleaders, and saying how much you feel better when you know that I'm in chat with you. And yes, we will still stand side by side and stop the idiot flirps from being in the chats. You are such a cool dude, and it's just means a lot to me to know that you have my back. To Kat, thank you for talking with me the other day about just whatever random weird stuff we were talking about. And to the rest of you out there, you guys know I love you. And I'll see you inside the chats. I'll see you in Discord. And coming up soon with Dark Steve, he's gonna start having things he calls the pub chats. And you can jump into his Discord. If I can find a link for it, or if he wants to, he can link it in. But we're gonna start having random hangouts with him inside his pub and just start shooting the breeze. And it'd be awesome to see some of you there. You guys are so amazing. Thank you for following this idiot Dean this far. And let's see how long this little roller coaster will go. So with that said, Goodbye, you awesome bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs. Be safe, be kind, and be civil. Have a good night.